Sports Network.
Welcome back here to X's and Bros, Michigan Sports Network. Ben Glaze, Ryan Elke, Anthony Bellino, all joining you. Join us now covering college sports and the MAC for our friends over at the Toledo Blade. One of the authorities on MACtion, folks, along with my buddy Dave Briggs. This guy's name is Kyle Rowland. Find him on Twitter at Kyle Rowland. I refuse to call it X. Kyle, my man, good morning to you. How are you? How's life? How are things, partner?
Everything is wonderful. I admire the enthusiasm at this hour.
An enthusiasm unknown to mankind, Kyle. You know this.
I know. I had a feeling you would say that.
Oh, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page then early this morning. All right, let's get to the big news. MACtion expansion. UMass set to become a member of the Mid-American Conference for the 2025-26 season. So they'll play out this year being an independent, and that will only leave Notre Dame and Connecticut as the lone independents in college football, with Army set to join the American this upcoming season. Why UMass to the MAC?
That's a good question. I guess multiple things. Number one, just the question of why is the MAC expanding? I mean, I think you have to be a little bit proactive in this climate and just the domino effects that happen in expansion. If the MAC were to lose teams, now they have another team. So there'd be more teams in the conference, if you understand where I'm going with that. Western Kentucky continues to have discussions with the MAC. I don't think that's like imminent or anything. But if you kind of backload things, then you could withstand losing some teams. But why literally UMass? I mean, I guess they were the easiest target, if that's how you want to describe it. Their football program obviously doesn't have a home. Being an independent football program is basically impossible unless you're Notre Dame. I mean, it's hard to fill out a schedule. You're kind of, playing all over the country. If you're UMass or UConn, you're playing maybe more guarantee games than you necessarily want to. So, I mean, for scheduling purposes, it's just an obvious, fix for UMass. And then, I mean, they have a great basketball program. So I think that's a plus for the MAC. I don't think UMass is necessarily going to come in and dominate the conference on the hoop side, but I don't know. I mean, you get a little different geography. I don't think it's a, grand slam move for the MAC, but I don't think it's some huge negative either.
Yeah, UMass would come in automatically, at least in hoops, as the best team in the conference. With the best KenPom and NCAA net ranking. I mean, it's 17-10 on the year coming out of the A-10. That would be the cream of the crop. But football-wise, it's like, okay, a little bit of a head-scratcher. But there are some ties there. They hung out in the conference for a few years, kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like some of these other independents have done, like in Notre Dame, where you're independent football, but you're playing in some other sports. It was just kind of like the inverse there for UMass. When we look at the Mid-American Conference, when adding UMass, that gets you to 13. So what do you think the overall end goal here is for the MAC as we see the Power 5 dissolve now into Power 4, and the Big 12's kind of a giant question mark for me, although some of the teams have really stepped up. The ACC, they're there. They're there, but they get no respect. And then you have the two juggernauts that are the Big 10 and the SEC. In the group of 5, the landscape is still kind of relatively healthy, based upon where they were at over the last couple of years. Like, all 5 of the conferences still exist. Sure, some teams have jumped, trying to go up, like a Cincinnati, for example. But outside of that, it seems like the group of 5 is somewhat stable.
I would agree with that. And I think the MAC in particular. I mean, there's just no conference that's a better geographic, institutional fit. I mean, all these schools are in the same footprint, except UMass now, I guess. Generally the same sort of, academic institutions. They're all, state schools. I don't think there's a conference where every team is more alike than the other than the MAC. And I also don't think parity is as prevalent in most of these leagues as the MAC. I mean, especially if you look at the football side. I mean, a lot of different teams have won the conference in the past 10, 15 years. A lot of different teams have been to the MAC title game in Detroit in that same time frame. I really think it it's a great league in terms of the competition. But have they fallen in terms of like the national outlook? I believe so. I mean, there were some glory days, late 90s, early 2000s, some really, really top-notch football teams. I mean, last year I think Toledo was pretty good. Miami wasn't horrible, but like when they played Miami, Florida, they got blown out. So I think like the upsets and how they can compete with some of the bigger teams maybe has taken a little bit of a dip lately. But I still think it's a really, really fun league, highly competitive. Obviously, Maction is its own brand. People in New Mexico know what Maction is, so that is a positive for the league. But I don't know. I think in recent years, there's been kind of a lack of creativity, a lack of vision. I don't think it's a super forward-thinking league. So from that standpoint, I think the UMass edition was somewhat surprising because MAC has kind of seemed hesitant to take bold steps. So maybe this is a new day.
It might be, and for the fans out there, you'll get UMass in some early action on September 7th as they will visit the Toledo Rockets, and Toledo obviously going to be on the board early with Quinyon Mitchell to the NFL draft, so that's great for not only the brand of the Rockets, but the Mid-American Conference as well, that was once known as the cradle of coaches. And so if UMass comes in, and that makes it 13, odd numbers are strange, so we probably want to get to an even number, which means we're going to look to add at least one more team, or perhaps maybe three more teams, right? Because that would give us, that'd get us all the way up to 16, and now we're really cooking with gas. Who would be some of the targets that you would look at, Kyle, if the MAC wanted to say, okay, we're going to grab UMass, but then we also want to kind of pick and choose our spots and adding a couple more teams?
I mean, Western Kentucky is absolutely at the top of the list. I mean, they won it in the MAC in a few years ago when them and Middle Tennessee State were rumored. Middle Tennessee State was the one who kind of squashed all that. So maybe, Middle Tennessee would also want in again at this point. But I think 14 is probably the number for the MAC. I'd be surprised if they added three more teams. The one issue you have with Western Kentucky or any other Conference USA team, they signed a grant of rights deal, a few years ago when they added Kennesaw State, New Mexico State, a bunch of other schools. And there are questions on how much it would cost to get out of the league. This Florida State lawsuit actually could impact that because if they end up being to wiggle their way out with, less payment than what the ACC wants, then I think there will be some sort of precedent set for the other leagues. But I think you're looking Western Kentucky at some point will be a MAC member. It's just a matter of when. I don't think it's going to be, this year, maybe not even next year. But eventually they'll get in. And the one thing you got to realize, it's still 2 years till UMass gets in. So they have a little bit of time here. If they went 1 or 2 years with a 13-team league, it's not ideal, but it's not impossible. It'd be okay.
Kyle, when we look at, obviously, the state of college football is in complete flux right now, right? Emphasis on the L in that word, because there's just so much up for grabs. Nobody really knows what's going on. NIL and the transfer portal has wreaked havoc. We talked to your cohort last week, Dave Briggs, about how it has really pillaged the mid-major, especially the MAC, in basketball. Is there a way, have you devised a plan on maybe how to fix things at the mid-major / group of five level? Does this need to be separated from the Power Five altogether? It's really been one of my sticking points, when we look at for football, for example, and basketball, and the rest of the sports are all different, but to isolate football here, I think the group of five should play for their own national championship. I don't know why we schedule these games and act like everybody has a chance when we know it's an invitational, and these teams that work hard all season long are never going to get the opportunity to get a seat at the table. So I'm a big proponent of that. But is there a way to try to maybe divert some of the pillaging that's taking place here at the mid-major level?
Man, that's a good question.
I'm full of good questions.
I am not fully in favor of the split. I don't know.
Why?
First of all, financially, I think they would be losing out on a lot of money. I mean, they're making out some in this new playoff deal, and obviously they're going to have a team in it each year, the group of five. So I don't know. I mean, you just want to compete at the highest level. I know you don't have a real chance to win the title, but I mean, that playoff berth is going to be huge. And I mean, think of the excitement last year if there was the 12-team playoff in Toledo. I mean, this place would have been going nuts. You would have been, going into the MAC title game, having a chance to be in the playoff. I don't know. I mean, I think there would be much less buzz for a group of five playoff. I don't know. I don't know how much people would be excited about that. I mean, that you're essentially going FCS in a way. I don't know. I mean, and you can't do it in basketball, obviously. I mean, you got to still, play for the NCAA tournament and that. But I mean, from a larger standpoint, I just think college football in general should just be able to break away and be its own entity. All the money involved in college football has just completely screwed up the entire college sports ecosystem. It's a shame that they can't figure this out and just have the top whatever teams, kind of no conferences almost in football, because it's just dumb that USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington are playing in the Big Ten and, field hockey and track and field and baseball and all these other sports. If they want to do it in football, fine, but in even men's basketball, it's dumb that those schools are in the Big Ten. So I just wish that football could kind of stand alone.
I will elect you to my board of governors for when I'm the commissioner of college athletics, Kyle, because we're in lockstep here. Football is completely different. Separate it completely from the athletic departments and just be done with it. Let's just get a players union involved. Let's do it. Let's get a CBA out there. Let's get a salary cap and let's get after it. Let's roll it out there and play. Now, how do we fix MAC basketball? Because there was once a time where things were looking really, really good in the hoops end, and right now you have one team in the top 130 in the NCAA net rankings. This is a debacle.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I mean, it's sad. I do think the tournament will be fun this year. I mean, I think the top five teams are very, very even, and would not be stunning if any of them won. But in terms of a national standpoint and having two teams, I mean, they're not even close. And it wasn't that long ago that they were up there. As you talked to David Briggs, you said last week, I thought he had a really good story about the state of MAC basketball. It's amazing how quickly things have changed. But, I mean, a lot of these teams' schedules are just atrocious. There is a little bit of the pillaging of top players. I mean, Toledo obviously lost Ray J. Dennis to Baylor, having a great year. It's obviously that's kind of unavoidable. I mean, good players are going to leave if they're wanted at big-time programs. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is because it just wasn't that long ago that the league was good, even though I know it's been a long time since they had a large team. I mean, I think it was the 9th-rated conference as recently as 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and now it's way down, 24th out of 32. I mean, that is really bad. But I think a lot of it starts with the commissioner. I mean, I think John Steinbrecher, good guy. I think that I've disagreed with a lot of higher up decisions maybe in the MAC in recent years.
Now, maybe the most important question, as Kyle does a great job covering both football and basketball for the Toledo Blade. He spent a lot of time in the Big Ten, a lot of time covering the MAC. He's got his finger on the pulse, but also on the golf course as well. Do we have any personal goals out there for the upcoming golf season as you begin your journey as a semi-professional golfer?
That's a good question. What are the golf goals for this summer? I mean, I guess not going through a 3-week stretch where I don't ever want to play the game again. There's just nothing more fun than playing well at golf. I just, in my opinion, Like some people think like the effortless to it and, hitting down the fairway and then hitting on the green and two putting for par. It's like, what's the fun in that? That sounds like the most fun thing ever to me.
What people like, pros play boring golf, right? Fairway, green, two putt. What's the fun in that? Yeah. I like to go in the trees. I like to spend 30 minutes looking for my ball. That's what I like to do. Like, I think that's a really good goal. Let's not have a stretch where we hate the game, want to throw our clubs in the lake.
Exactly.
What's the best part about your game? What's old reliable, old faithful to you?
I mean, definitely not putting. I'm pretty good at getting up and down around the green, but probably, it all starts with driving the ball. I mean, I don't hit it far, but I hit a lot of fairways, and when you don't hit fairways, you learn how difficult it is to score well because, it just being in the rough or being behind trees is a big problem.
I am that guy that struggles to find fairways. That's a complete game changer. The days I hit the fairways, I play great. The days that I am behind a tree, under a bush, hit the cart barn, I'm actually in the beverage cart, those are problems, and you can't recover from there. Putting, man, I'm telling you, long putter. Went and got a long putter last year. Changed the game. Changes it because it's so different. It like shakes any bad juju that you got. Just like shakes it out. It's like walking around the greens with sage in your pocket.
I will say one thing that makes a dramatic difference. I've played golf my whole life. I've been lucky enough to be pretty good at it. But last year was the first time I ever did a full bag club fitting. And it really unbelievable. First of all, the process was very interesting. Just the loads of information and data they throw at you, fascinating. But it helped unbelievably. And I'm someone who generally shoots high 70s, low 80s, and like you could tell like a dramatic difference. Especially the driver. It completely fits my game, and it's been a total game changer. So I definitely highly recommend doing a fitting.
Oh, I went through it 2 years ago, and it made all the difference in the world. Now, granted, I figured that this is probably the last time I'm going to buy clubs, and then the next set of clubs I'll get to be like the massively oversized offset because my swing speed's 12 miles an hour, and I'm playing from the senior tees. But I did the same thing. I went all in. I'm saying let's do this. Did you do a story on that, by the way, on your experience?
I did it at Miles of Golf, and I wrote a story about it last summer. And it really, really was fascinating. And I couldn't recommend it more. I know people who are very stubborn about golf and, it's not the equipment and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't guarantee like you're going to become some good golfer, but like it makes a world of difference. Like you cannot just go buy it off the rack. I know people think that, but like, that's just not how it works. Like every swing is different. They make these clubs, the technology is so unbelievable now. Like whether you're a low ball player or a high flight player, they will get you in exactly what you need.
He is Kyle Rowland. Find him on Twitter at Kyle Rowland Blade. Go read that article about that in All the Mac at the Tuna Blade with Kyle Rowland. Kyle, thank you, my friend.